Well, next, let's clear up South Florida and Florida. The final Smart Ride ends with a record for 20th anniversary. The 20th anniversary and final Smart Ride took place this week. The 165-mile ride began Friday from the University of Miami, and the two-day bike ride traveled the Florida Keys to Key West and finished at mile marker 0, just 90 miles from Cuba, and ended in an emotional high point. Smart Ride 2023 concludes with nearly $1.3 million raised and total results of more than $16 million for HIV/AIDS services. Even more impressive is when you consider that the fundraiser for 6 legendary LGBTQ+ beneficiaries in South Florida, Tampa, and Orlando earns 100% of all money raised. You heard that right. No money donated by supporters to Smart Ride goes to expenses. Any expenses are supported by sponsors that make Smart Ride the mammoth success it has become. Sponsors like Community AIDS Network, to major media sponsorship from Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network. Our reporter on site, Al Ferguson, conducted more than 50 interviews during the two-day ride that stopped overnight at the famous Hawks Cay Resort in the heart of the Florida Keys. So many riders, sponsors, crew, and volunteer supporters reflected on the history of the 20th anniversary ride. In the coming weeks, you will see a variety of special reports. Smart Ride's executive director, Glenn Weinzimmer, emotionally described the early days of Smart Ride and the history of the final days of the closing ceremonies in Key West. You can donate to Smart Ride until December 31st, and the formal check presentation will take place in January. Go to thesmartride.org. Wow, what a ride it has been. I mean, I've never done the ride myself, but I, as most of us at this table, have so many friends who've done it. And people that surprise me often, I'll think, like, bitch, I didn't know you ever got on a bike. People that really have became motivated to do this ride, to become fit enough to do the ride because of what the ride is and what it represents and what it gives to the community. 100% is unheard of. It's incredible. It is. And props and kudos, mazel tov to Glenn Weinzimmer. Yes. He is amazing.
Yeah, you know, Glenn Weinzimmer is an incredible human being, and I'm not saying that just because he's a friend. I love him, and I thought this of him before he became friends. You know, and you know how it started. Okay, Glenn was given 6 months to live. That was standard. If you had HIV or AIDS, you weren't going to be around for more than 6 months. And here he is 20 plus odd years later, you know, and that was how the Smart Ride was founded. That's how it was started. And in 20 years, they've raised so much money. This was my first Smart Ride. It was Ed's also first Smart Ride, you know, and what a way to finish, you know. All kinds of sizes of people, all kinds of colors of people, all kinds of religions of people. They weren't just gay people riding. They weren't just trans people riding. They were everything. You could check off every single box. There was a 14-year-old. There was an 82-year-old. Wow. Okay, amazing. When I saw the 67-year-old that I had a conversation with get back on her bike, fan herself off, pat herself off, and then go back off Hawks Cay, I was like, wow, I do nothing, right? I was like, oh my God.
I gotta get back in the car.
And you're skinny.
You know, and I'm skinny. And then I got back in the car and then drove on to the next one, you know? You know.
You go to the car.
I mean, I look sweaty and everything, like if I had ridden, you know? So
you spritz before you go.
I was part of, thank you, Sunserve and Tony Lima, for allowing me to be part of their emotional support cheer squad. That is what they called them. And at each rest stop, the therapists were there to talk to anybody. Maybe something came up during the ride. People were riding for people they lost. People were riding for people that they had once ridden the ride with. People were riding for themselves. People were riding for all kinds of different reasons. And so there were therapists on hand. You know, I'm not a therapist. All I can do is maybe scream at you and fan you with my fan. So I had blisters all over my hands by the end of the 2 days. But there was nowhere else I'd rather be than there. It was just so beautiful. The closing ceremony was on the pier right next to the AIDS Memorial. There was not a dry eye in the place. Like, everybody was weeping. Glenn, you should be super proud of your 20 years. You are an incredible human. The Smart Ride will live on. I know it will live on, just like Ed was saying, which I know that you'll probably say something about that in your comments. But Smart Ride 20, bless you. I'm so blessed to have been a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I have chills right now for everything that you just said, Faye. No, to be honest with you, it was such an emotional journey and an experience. And what I loved about the Smart Ride, it brought so many people together, as you identified. So many people together, no matter who you are, no matter your ability. Like, so about people with abilities. We had people who were disabled, you know, who were there on a ride and who kept on going and said, nope, I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to see Tony Lima's people at Sunserve, and I'm going to keep going, you know? It honestly was really, really amazing ride. And it means so much much for the 6 entities that are our beneficiaries that will get the resources to support the work that we're doing. The work of HIV and AIDS and STI is not done. We're far from done. I know
especially in Florida.
Well, especially in Florida. At Pride Lines, just today I was in our office and I gave our team off because they all worked really hard. But I had probably about 20 calls today for people who want, tests, because they're afraid. They want to know their status. And so this journey is far from over. And this is why the 6 benefiting agencies will work with other partners in the community. We'll bring more people on. But we are committed to doing something because the fight is still here. We're still fighting. People are still dying. And you know what's scary for me? I'm a Afro-Latino, but what's scary for me is the statistic that the number 1 population that's impacted by this is Black women. And guess what? These are the same women who have saved us in election year after election year after election year. Who have saved us LGBTQ plus AI community, right? So this is a fight that we must continue to take on. Again, great to the scientists for making PrEP and PEP and all these things, but we still have a long way to go. And so that's why we'll continue this ride.
I think that people have gotten a little nonchalant about it because the medicines are so good now. But I was there in the horror days and people were dropping like flies. And so I don't forget that at all. And, like you were saying, you said that, there's still a long way to go. It's true. It's true. And people forget, especially like the younger generation that didn't see.
They didn't see the horror.
They didn't see it. I call those days literally the horror days. You would see someone and they'd be fine. 3 months later, they'd have the look. And anyone that was there, you knew what that look was. Face sucked in and you're like, oh, Lord, they have it. And it was pretty much a death sentence.
I know Glenn Weinzimmer for such a long time, and it's back to those days. And I'm so proud of him that he, in that moment when he was given just 6 months to live, he created something as spectacular as the Smart Ride. And he carried on with this project for 20 years and benefited so many people when many other AIDS rides around the country were disappearing. And he carried on with this. And like you said, all these new treatments and all these things, look at his life now. He's still here all these years later, doing fantastic, in good health. And he's carrying this mission, and I hope somebody else carried on.
We will carry it on. And what this did for me, personally, is I had a cousin who in 2007 died. The family didn't talk about it, right? It was one of those, he was in the closet, hush hush. We know he had cancer.
He had cancer.
But we knew Cousin Mark was the life of every party. Cousin Mark was the dancer. He was the one that was really bold. He had the best fashion ever. Cousin Mark was the man. He was the fucking man. And he succumbed. He died in 2007. And this ride, brought up the memories of my cousin, who I adored, I loved. I was back in the closet. I was still young in 2007. I was a baby. But, I adored Mark, and it really brought up the memories of Mark. And I am committed, and Pride Lines is committed to continuing something. I will work my hardest, and I'm definitely going to do it in the memory of all of those,
and
but particularly
with a new vision.
For sure. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with
beautiful.
You are Uncle Mark's, Cousin Mark's legacy. You are, and we all had a Cousin Mark. You know what I mean? I had a Guillermo. He just disappeared. He just disappeared one day. I was like, what happened to my uncle? Uncle Guillermo.
Ronald Eric Allen.
You see? I asked 10 gay boys at Smart Ride if they use condoms, and they all 10 said no. Okay, and that wasn't, and I could ask 20 more, and I would get the same answer. All right, it's scary times, folks. So know your status. How about that? I'll end this segment with just saying that. Get tested. Go to a place like Pride Lines that offers that. Get tested and know your status. Okay, it is not a death sentence anymore, but you should be responsible and know where you're at. Right.